Hello, everyone. My name is Claire McFadden. I'm very pleased to be joined today by award-winning journalist Alice Matthews, who is calling in from Sydney, Australia. She is here to answer some of the questions you have about music journalism and specifically writing an album review. So welcome, Alice, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an awesome startup.
Thanks, Alice. So the first question we have for you today, so many of our young writers obviously aspire to be journalists, and we would love to hear about your specific journey about becoming a journalist, and also if there's anything that our young authors can do at the moment in order to prepare for what they might have or becoming a journalist themselves.
I guess it started in high school for me. I took double English and I actually struggled a lot with overwriting things. I had one teacher say to me, Alice, one day it'll click, you'll just understand, but you've just got to keep writing. And so that's what I did. I literally just kept writing, and I think that's the best thing that anyone can do. And then I ended up studying journalism at university, which, to be honest, a journalism degree is actually a pretty recent development. Back in the day, to be a journalist, you jumped straight into a newsroom and you just did it. So I think if you do decide to study journalism, it's worth studying something alongside it that interests you too, politics, psychology, anything, because really a good journalist is somebody that is interested and therefore interesting. So I think another thing I would say while I was studying, there was so many new forms of storytelling, so much new media was coming about, and I think instead of sort of resisting that, I think a really good thing is to embrace ways of storytelling and lean into them, because at the end of the day, it all does come down to good writing. That is still the most important thing. But this world is always changing in the way that we communicate with people. So I think paying attention to that is also really valuable.
That is fantastic advice. Thank you, Alice. So I wanted to speak specifically, you're currently working on TV for the first time with the current affairs program, The Feed. Prior to that, you worked at the Australian Broadcasting Corporation's youth radio station, Triple J. So what drew you specifically to music journalism?
I just always loved music. At uni, I was volunteering as a gig reviewer for our uni bar there, and I used to take photos and review the gigs, albeit pretty poorly at the time, but I really loved it. And also I grew up listening to Triple J. It was just kind of a part of the fabric of growing up in Australia, I think. And I always just thought it was really cool, I guess. So I wanted to be a part of it. So for me, working at Triple J combined two things I absolutely adored, which was like writing and talking to people and interviewing and news and music. And I could do that from the same space. So that's what drew me there.
That's fantastic. And this is a great point for our young writers, is that there are so many jobs out there that incorporate writing as a really strong element, but there's so much more to them as well. Like, as you say, doing interviews and listening to the music and the whole gamut of what comes to be music journalism.
Absolutely, and you can totally find something that fits, because for me, I didn't really like hard news. I was sort of intimidated by it. So I hated the thought of becoming a journalist for a while, because I thought that's all there was. And that's not true. There was Triple J and there was Triple J News in this pretty particular niche that really suited me. And I think that niche is out there for other people as well.
That's so lovely to hear. So for this particular competition, writers are asked to reflect on an album as a whole. And so I think particularly these days in the era of music streaming, we sometimes don't think about an album as a whole. We think of music as individual songs.
Yeah.
How do you suggest writers prepare for this, for writing a review about an album as a whole piece of work?
Well, of course, listening to the album as a whole piece of work and considering it as a body of work and how it fits together is really important, as well as reading good reviews. But something I learned from being around my old mates at Triple J was it's also really important to consider the context around the album and the life that surrounds it, where it kind of came from, what the band was aiming to do. So doing your research beyond just that album, I think, is really important. What came before, what might come after. And because it is a review, it's quite subjective. So when you are listening, really pay attention to the way the album makes you feel or the way the album doesn't make you feel. Music is about connection and making you feel something. And so if it's not doing that, think about why. And if it is, also why.
Fantastic. So we're looking for something quite personal.
Yeah, essentially.
That's fantastic advice. So how do you see music journalism being different to other types of journalism, and how might it be the same?
Well, like you just said, I guess it's quite personal. The type of journalism I'm doing at the moment is, to an extent, quite objective. I'm canvassing different perspectives. My opinion, I guess, in a lot of ways isn't that important. But with something like an album review, your opinion and your subjective point of view is what I've come there for, is what I want to hear. But it is kind of similar in ways that you're still, in a way, in an album review, telling the story of a body of work, how it came to be, what it exists for, why, how it makes you feel, and you still want something well written and an educated opinion, which is in a lot of ways the same as what we do every day here.
Right. So, Alice, we're also looking for a few music recommendations from you. Do you have anything that you recommend from the past few years that we should be listening to?
Oh, there's a couple of really amazing young Aussie artists that I've been loving the past few years. One is Stella Donnelly, but we've also got Angie McMahon, G Flip, Thelma Plummer, all worth keeping an ear out. One of my favourite albums, I think, this year was Crushing by Julia Jacklin. And also, probably not so much on the same beat, but When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go by Billie Eilish. I loved listening to that as a whole.
Yeah, that's great. Some great recs there for our young writers that can put that on around as they start writing their review.
Yeah, two really different writing processes from Julie Jacklin and Billie Eilish as well. Like, on one hand, you've got Julie Jacklin, which in a way is quite narrative, and then you've got Billie Eilish, which is really sort of sleep paralysis and entertaining bizarre fantasies and stuff like that. So, yeah.
That's great. And that kind of brings me to our final question, Alice, in terms of what you're looking for in a review. So we've talked a little bit about your own personal opinion and how an album might make you feel. I know you've touched a little bit too on these differences in various types of music and how you might even articulate those into words as a young writer. Is there anything else that you're looking for, or any final tips you might have for our young music journalists?
I guess I'll be looking for a review that grabs my attention and makes me want to learn more, makes me decide why I want to listen to it, or perhaps why I don't. Something that gives me a sense of what the band was aiming for with this album. And as I mentioned before, the life surrounding its creation. There was a band here in Australia, Boy and Bear, who's recently just brought out an album. But there was the most incredible story behind making that album because of the lead singer's illness. So that album actually took so much spirit and put the band in a really vulnerable place creating it. And for me, part of a review of that album is that story as well. So if there was something in particular that inspired the heart of the album, I would love to hear about it. And as we mentioned before as well, something that gives me a sense of how the music made the author feel. What did it inspire in you, or what didn't it inspire in you? Did you have expectations? Were you looking forward to the album, and did it meet and exceed, or not meet at all?
Well, that is wonderful advice there, and so many great tips in general today, Alice, that you've shared. So thank you very much for being with us today.
You're so welcome, and all the best to everybody.
Been really lovely to have you. So thank you once again, and we'll let you get back to your day there at work.
Thanks so much, Claire. Great to speak with you.
Thank you, Alice. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.